Hello, folks. This is a deeply concerning video to make, and it's on the destruction of Canada, and it's absolutely tied to immigration. Canada holds the highest housing prices in the world on average of comparable states in the West, especially in the West. And we're considerably in Canadian dollars when you take American USD and you convert pricing, especially in real estate, you find Canada is explosively higher than any other places in the free world. And it's no accident, folks. It's no accident that real estate represents 21% of our economy. Overinflated housing. How did we get there? Well, taxation is a large part of it, but it's not the absolute end all and be all by the numbers. The end all and be all, folks, is absolutely our explosive, and I repeat, explosive immigration rates. Now, right now, you can all Google search, at least that much as we're allowed to now, and you can get that it's 485,000. Already a record shattering number, an explosive rate of peoples brought to Canada. We're at 40 million nationally. Alberta's seen a massive migration of people, and they predict now that we're going to have as much as 5 million to the Alberta population in just 3 years, which, when you divide it out, it's about 13% of total immigration to Canada is seeing that net migration to Alberta. Folks, it's not a good thing, contrary to what everybody is trying to say in media, in government, and everything else. Our radical housing prices are directly affected by how many people we continue to dump into Canada. It's no accident. There's massive strikes all over the country. Specifically, we've seen Ontario, we've seen British Columbia now. It's no accident. Wages cannot keep up with the astronomical increase in housing. So what do? You migrate to cheaper provinces. But do they hold the work? Do they have the sustainability that the government brags about? The answer is clearly, for all Canadians, no. No, the sustainability is not there. The prices in Alberta continually go up. Why? Because there's an unavailability of housing. The more people you bring in, the more people that leave places like Vancouver and Ontario cashing in their chips, which are overvalued chips because not enough housing again for the people. They can get a better home in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and hopefully get a job. But if you own your house clear title, does it really matter the quality of work you get, the wages you get? Not really, when you don't have that astronomical expense of the household expense right there in front of you. You can get away. But how does the new generation, how does anyone under the age of 30 make it? They don't. The answer is they don't make it. They're forever renting, and they're forever watching rents increase at an unsustainable rate. Canada has the highest per person per capita immigration rates in the entire world, and we have the least amount of land availability. How is that, you say? I'm going to say it again, and I just released real numbers, real maps of government locked out lands versus private property in Canada. There isn't going to be any new releases of private property in Canada. They're not going to. The government is not going to do that. What they're going to do is subdivide what you have. Now, folks, the numbers are 485,000 this year. That is not accurate. One, we've taken on a massive quadrupled increase in refugees that goes on top of legal immigration. That takes us from 485 to 250,000 new Canadians just this year. What else? The Biden deal. The Biden deal for legalizing illegal border crossers that were going across in Quebec. Canada agreed to take on another whopping 70,000 annually a year from Joe Biden. This is now law. It's cemented. It's a treaty with the United States of America. Go look at your numbers. We've just sailed past 600,000 just this year alone. And Alberta's bragging about in the next 3 years getting 300,000. Well, do the math in 3 years, just at 600,000. It's going up every year by monumental rates. In fact, the biggest argument between CPC and the Liberals is who's going to get to promise 1 million immigrants a year first. And CPC promises 2030, 1 million annual immigrants to Canada a year. 1/40th of the current population. Think about that. Do the math. How many years until new immigrants represent a vast total of the country? Well, it's 20 years. By Agenda 2050, the Canada today will not even visually look the same. It will look like India and Southeast Asia. That's a reality. Not to be racist, I'm just putting the demographics in their proper place. We will look like India and lots of parts of Southeast Asia. That's the reality. That's the truth of this Commonwealth and how Canada is set up in this Commonwealth. The only one of its kind. A lot of Canadians don't want to look at these realities, but they're ever present and ever truthful. What does those rates, when you combine just to 2030, what do those rates look like in the change of economics for real estate? Real estate will move from 21% of the economy, a $2.2 trillion economy, to absolutely 36% of the Canadian economy. Think about that, Canadians. Largely borrowed. Right now in Alberta, Danielle Smith, the complete liberal. And there's no escaping the truth of this liberal reality. It's a liberal leftist policy of the extreme kind. It's so unpopular even amongst liberals, you're seeing a big hesitation in the United States of America. Joe Biden can't change immigration policies in the United States. Americans on both sides of the fence won't allow it. Why? It erodes wages. It erodes affordability. It jacks up inflation and the cost of living. Your most critical CPI indexes, which I've already analyzed USA and Russia in absolute 2023 world recorded numbers. I know a lot of folks aren't mathy. They don't have the statistical analysis. A lot of people don't go to school for that. I did. That was one of my majors. I struggled in statistics. I got through it. And I've learned over the years to start putting a visual mathematical representation to it. And folks, clearly, Canada in its food, housing, and energy is off the charts, unsustainable, and unaffordable. What does that mean? A mass amount of Canadians are going to be devalued at excruciating rates. The lifestyle you have today will not be present in just 3 short years. Alberta will be way ahead of everybody else. Why? Because the radical socialist Danielle Smith, leftist, extreme socialist leftist policy, says that we need to pay $1,200 a head. Canadian taxpayers, you're to fork out $1,200 a head for everyone who migrates to Alberta. $1,200. Now, you don't think it's a lot of money, but you do the math on 200,000 people a year. It's a mass amount of money, and there's a whole bunch of other subsidies put on top of that. You don't see anything like that for any average Albertan struggling to make ends meet. This is ridiculous. It's unsustainable development. Alberta cannot keep up with the rising need of housing. Nowhere in Canada does. Now, we watched Ontario and BC go through this exact same scenario. And look where they're at today. Look at the last 20 years of Vancouver and Ontario, specifically the greater GTA. Vancouver, Maine, Vancouver, and its attachments. It's unsustainable. People are paying $1 million to $1.5 million for a dump. A dump. And if you don't believe me, I lived there. I spent 3 years, the last 3 years, steadily on and off in Ontario in the GTA. I saw it myself. Folks over the age of 50, well settled in. Those that didn't get in the last 20 years are having a heck of a time ever getting into the market. And if you want to, you're 2 hours away from your job. You're traveling vast distances, and often you're in an old, crummy, rundown home if you got in just in the last 5 years. And you're dealing with rats, roaches, and all kinds of other crime, drugs, and poor, badly established communities. Terrible infrastructure. And it's not getting any better. Will Alberta mimic that transition? Of course they will. It won't be long before places like Alberta and Saskatchewan match places like British Columbia and Ontario. It won't take many years at all. Dump hundreds of thousands into these areas over and over, year after year, and you will see the fool's folly. Do we have the great jobs bragged about? Do we have the well-lasting, outperforming long-term employment? The answer is clearly no. There's no long-term employment in Alberta resources. None whatsoever. They've put Agenda 2050 in place. Last time I checked, there are no battery plants being built. There's no EV producing car companies in Alberta. There's no massive liquid natural gas facilities being built in Alberta. None. These resources are being extracted in Alberta to a measure. There's work in some mines, but nowhere near the sustainability of the population density increases Alberta's taking. What are you building here? A Hong Kong, just like Vancouver and Toronto. Urban density in Canada far exceeds that of the United States of America and clearly that of Russia. How is that humanly possible with 40 million people in a country as vast as Canada? It's called Crown lands federally and provincially. They're kept largely away from all Canadians and all First Peoples. There's maps on this. I just released the maps. People don't care. The wealthy don't care because they're making mass amounts of money. USA does take taxpayer money, the working citizens, to use it to subsidize corporate infrastructure investment. I don't know if I agree with that, but at least it creates and generates jobs for Americans. Wages clearly in the United States converted to Canadian dollars clearly outpace Canada by 10%. More than that, taxes are massively lower on average for the American than the Canadian. The American's doing very well, considerably well compared to a Canadian. Savings accounts in the United States versus Canada are astronomically higher. Americans are saving way more money than Canadians are. Canadians are nowhere near saving anywhere in the ballpark of an American. It's 1/6 that of an American. And are those savings going to generate a home for anyone under the age of 30? The answer is clearly no. And with immigration, radical immigration like this, there is a massive tail of the tape on the erosion of wages. We're seeing it. We're seeing it all over the country in strikes. Labor can't keep up with the losses to the CPI, the losses to the standard of living, and the massive increases in your basic needs. Way beyond that measured of USA, and way beyond that measured from Russia. Believe that or not, that's the truth. Is it true a lot of the wants of Russians are unavailable to them? Yes. Your wants are not available to you. The CPI index is very high. It's very high, almost 75% higher than that of Canada. But on Canada's basic needs, meaning you can't get by without these things, these are the have-tos, the survival, the ability to grow and generate and be productive in society, have a sustainable family and have children. Ours is astronomical comparatively to USA and even Russia, way beyond Russia. Canada's wages may be comparable to that of USA, 10% lower, but our tax rates are massive. And if you think the Russian government has taxed the hell out of its people, you'd be sadly mistaken. And this is world measurements as of 2023, reports by the best of the best in the world. Russians are taxed 1/3 the amount of an American, 1/6 the amount of the average Canadian. Think about that. Russia chooses to tax corporations, tax foreigners who invest into Russia. That's where they get their wealth. And of course, they sell their resources and they subsidize their people. Now, I'm not talking for socialism or capitalist ideas, but if we look at USA as the capitalist concept, we look at Russia as the socialist concept, clearly Canada doesn't measure up in either of those respects. We are not advancing with socialism to any successful degree that Russia is, and we're definitely not advancing in the capitalist success as USA is. Where does Canada subsidize? Where does it put its money? Into the Commonwealth, into foreigners who get to harvest from Canada while we receive pennies on the dollar. The money's not going back into Canadians. It flees out of the country. Is this the same comparatively for Russia and the United States? The answer is no. And you're going to be hard-pressed to find anybody to dispute these real numbers, real economic markers. We can paint things the way we want. We can pay economists loyal to the crown to sell us on lies. But the reality is, Canadians, the lifestyle you have today, largely for those under the age of 30 and many more and many other age groups, especially retirees, will not enjoy anything remotely close to what they have today in 3 years' time. That's a fact. Numbers don't lie. Politicians do. Right now, we have Christine from the Liberals, Miss Vice Premier, Deputy Prime Minister, telling everybody she's going to have food rebates for all the poorest Canadians. Who pays that bill? It's the children of today, all the people working today, and all those retired. You're being borrowed against you to subsidize those of today. That's how Canada's doing it. Because Canada can't legitimately put monies forward on the budget to these issues because Canada is creating the inflation. Radical taxation, multiple levies, the exact thing that the United States warred for its independence 247 years ago. It was the prime reason America said, no, you will not burden the people, making foreign powers richer, foreign entities more at the expense of our people. No, no, no. And they warred and they went independent from that. Now, Russia took a different direction, a socialist direction. So where does that leave Canada? It's a divine form of socialism and a divine form of capitalism. All the wealthy politicians elected and appointed, all those who are sworn to the loyalty of the crown, the very few are enjoying all the rewards that divine socialism promises, all the rewards of divine capitalism it promises. While the vast majority of all Canadians suffer with all the losses and corruptions of socialism and all the losses and corruption of capitalism. How does this transpire? Again, it's when the government holds 90% of the country for itself and all its foreign friends entirely, not you, the people. We can go all over the world and look at every country in the world. Canada by far has the least amount of its country available per person per capita to Canadians than anybody else in the world. Now, sure, there's Norway. We can look at all these northern socialist countries, but their definition and their availabilities do not define the same way as Canada. Are they also constitutional monarchies? Yes. Do they have the same premise as Canada? Yes. But are they enacted as badly and as corrupt as Canada and as extreme in land availability as Canada? No. There's nowhere in the world that you can match any of that